Hello and welcome to another edition of Long Beach Treasures. I'm your host, Harvey Keller. Today we finally made it to the Queen Mary. We should have been here probably years ago because certainly this is the treasure of Long Beach. And joining me right now is Lavetta Kramer, and she's the executive director of the RMS Queen Mary Foundation.
That's absolutely correct.
Thanks for joining me, and thanks for taking me on a tour of your beautiful, beautiful ship.
Oh, well, I'm so delighted that you're here, Harvey, finally, but it's never too late to come visit the Queen Mary. That's perfectly all right. In fact, you know, in 2007, the ship will have been in Long Beach for 40 years. Can you believe that?
No.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yes, it really is.
And of course, this month in May, we're going to be celebrating the 70th anniversary of the maiden voyage of the Queen Mary. And it's a remarkable thing because it's the only ship of its kind still afloat. It's the only one anywhere in the world where you can come see this real treasure. And here it's right here in Long Beach.
And not long ago, its kissing cousin was here.
Yes, exactly. The Queen Mary 2 came in February, and it was a very exciting event. I happened to be aboard the Queen Mary 2 for that.
Oh, really?
And listening to them speak with great reverence about the namesake Queen Mary, it was very, very thrilling to see it all happening.
Well, where are we going to go first?
Well, let's see. I believe we're going to cross onto the ship first, since we're at the moment on the wharf, of course. And we're going to take a look at several of the beautiful rooms on the ship and also share with you some of the material from the maiden voyage from our archive, so you can see some of those real treasures.
Good. I can't wait. Let's go.
Let's go.
Okay, now what are we going to see?
Well,
where are we going?
We're actually boarding the ship now, which is pretty clear, and we're going into the main hall, which is on the Promenade Deck. It was the heartbeat and sort of the center of activity for the first-class passengers. There were shops and writing rooms and drawing rooms and all kinds of activities for them to do, and it still is today. It's decorated in the style of the ship after World War II. And we thought we'd also go into the art gallery and share with you some of the fabulous art we'll be celebrating, which of course is 70 years old as well.
Is this considered Art Deco?
Absolutely Art Deco. Designed in the 20s, and construction was completed in the 30s, and then of course she sailed through the mid-60s, so it's really Art Deco as well as mid-century.
She's still a beautiful ship, isn't she?
She is. We think she's beautiful.
This main hall looks pretty much today the same way as it did when she first set sail in 1936.
You can see this medallion in the ceiling, which is one of the original lights. Of course, they were
5 feet in diameter and weighs 400 pounds.
This one?
Yes.
Wow.
And of course, they had to be close to the ceiling so that when the ship tossed and turned, the chandelier would not.
And where is the art gallery?
It's right around this way. Shall we go?
Oh, you bet. I don't want to miss anything. When I get a chance to get a private tour of the Queen Mary, I'm all for it.
I agree. Well, here we are, and tell them a little bit about this room, Will.
The art gallery houses a representative amount of artwork that was aboard the ship when she set sail. It was said in 1936 when she set sail that the Queen Mary contained more artwork than many museums possessed. There were over 30 artists and artisans that were commissioned by the British government to create the monumental murals, the oil paintings, all of the Art Deco decoration that you see aboard the ship. Many people don't realize that the Queen Mary is one of the largest collections of original Art Deco artwork anywhere in the world.
No, you have them all in one room. These used to be...
Not all. This is
these used to be
an amount. They used to be positioned about the ship, yes.
Mm-hmm. One of our plans for the 70th anniversary, as in our update for the new exhibits, is to move some of this artwork back into its original location on the ship. For example, in one of the rooms we have some artwork from the veranda grill, which we'll be putting back into that space since it's now used for catering events and functions as a salon.
I see some more. Is this another room full of artwork?
This is actually what we're looking at right here ahead of us is the artwork from the veranda grill, and that's a self-portrait of the artist, Doris Zinkeisen.
You know, I've never been in this room before. Is this open to the public?
Oh, yes.
Absolutely,
it's as part of the
day.
General tour.
Oh, really?
This was put together in the mid-90s, and it was artwork that we had in storage. One of our goals is to get as much of our material out and on view to the public as possible. But this represents artwork that was not displayed for some time. A lot of the art is in its original place on the ship, in the Grand Salon and the Royal Salon and others.
One interesting aspect of the room is that this is not an original room aboard the ship. This room was actually created from the space left from the center funnel.
When they took the smokestacks out.
Took the smokestacks out.
Ah.
Now, there was no need for them at that point except cosmetically, and so we gained a lot of space. For those who have been to Sunday brunch, on a day when there was an overflow crowd, they sat in the Windsor Salon, and there used to be a smokestack that went through that room as well.
Where are we going next?
Well, let's see. Why don't we take a look at...
do some archive material.
Let's look at some...
Right
Will has brought some beautiful material out of the archive that is from the maiden voyage of the Queen Mary in 1936. We thought that your viewers might enjoy seeing some of the original material. And we'll be displaying this, of course, when we get our exhibit together for the anniversary in May.
You'll have to tell me what all this is.
Absolutely. First is the program that was given to every passenger on the maiden voyage. It features some of the artwork.
In fact, that picture is right behind us here in the art gallery.
It's right there.
Very lavish and just a beautiful program.
All the intricate ironwork, scroll work.
Isn't it wonderful?
Yes.
And those are the doors that are in the Grand Salon. If you go to Sunday brunch, you'll see those at the end of the room, the forward end of the Grand Salon.
They were designed by a father and son team of artisans, Walter and Donald Gilbert.
And they have sort of a mythical theme of sea creatures and gods and so forth. That one opens out, I think. There's a picture of the door in place, if you will, and the mural above it is this wonderful scene, which is one of the few scenes on the ship that actually looks like the British countryside. A good deal more of it is much more Art Deco themed than countryside themed, if you will. It's a wonderful tapestry-looking painting.
Yes.
It's also the largest piece on the ship.
By Philip Connard.
I wonder how many of these are still in existence from people who sailed on the maiden voyage.
Well, you know, every now and then I'll get a call from someone who has one of them that they collected or a grandparent did or something like that, and they will return them to us, which is lovely. This one was returned to us by a former passenger.
Oh.
This is at the other end of the Grand Salon, and you'll see that when you go down there and see this in person. But anyway, this program is just so beautiful, as you can see. It's very opulent. Here's a rendering, actually, of the Grand Salon. It probably wasn't totally completed by the time this brochure was put together. And so they have a rendering of it as opposed to the real thing, which you'll see, of course, when you go down to that wonderful room. Anyway, what else do you have, Will?
That's quite a nice souvenir for the
oh, yes,
passengers.
Absolutely.
This is the maiden voyage radio souvenir.
From a broadcast point of view, that's kind of interesting, huh?
I thought you might like to take a look at that. She was the first ship to be able to keep in touch with both sides of the Atlantic through the entire trip.
She also had phones in the staterooms.
Yes, first.
So they could call back and forth and reach the operator.
So they broadcast from the ship?
Yes, they did on the maiden voyage.
What else have we got? What's this medallion, Will?
The medallion was cast by the Royal Mint for the...
Let me take it out.
Got it? Yeah. For the maiden voyage. And they were sold for £5.
There we are. Right side up is better. That's lovely, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
These are very rare. Not something we see a lot of. This is also returned to us by a patron.
Souvenir passenger lists. We have them from the first class, second class, and third class.
Those were the passengers on the maiden voyage?
Yes.
And you know something? The thing we're asked more than anything else is, do you have my name on a list, or my parents, or my aunt and uncle, they were on such and such a voyage? Do you have something that shows that? Well, the The archive does not include the passenger manifests. These are things that were given to the passengers, and all we have are those that have been returned to us. So we always ask people if they have these to copy them and send a copy to us, or to donate them if they can. That way we can make that more complete and answer people's questions better.
Who was the most famous passenger on the maiden voyage?
I would say Rose Kennedy. Mrs. Kennedy was aboard. Cecil Beaton, the photographer and costume designer, was aboard. The mayor and mayoress of Liverpool, the Marquis and Marquioness of Milford Haven.
So they had a few celebrities aboard.
Oh, they had, yes, it was a who's who.
And the anonymously wealthy.
And how much was the crossing? Did it cost? Do you know?
In 1936, first class was about $1,071 for two.
That would have been pricey back then.
Absolutely, in 36. Second class was about $550, third class about $335.
These are great.
Aren't they fun?
Where are we going next?
Why don't we go and see the Grand Salon in person?
All right, let's.
Perfect.
Okay, now we're in the Grand Salon.
This today is the Grand Salon. Originally, it was the first class dining room. This was the largest room ever built on a ship. It travels the entire 118 feet width of the hull. It could seat all 815 first class passengers at one seating. The room is 3 decks in height, 3 bands of peroba wood imported from Brazil are on the walls. This forward bulkhead, this is the map that Lavetta was talking about up in the art gallery. It was pictured in that souvenir program. It was designed by MacDonald Gill. There are 2 tracks that you see in the center of the map. Inside each one of those tracks is a crystal representation, one of the Queen Mary, one of the Queen Elizabeth. Every day when you came in for dinner, those crystal ships were on pulleys, and you would be able to see where you were and how far you had traveled from the day before and where you were in the Atlantic. It also became a tradition that when both ships crossed each other's paths in the middle of the ocean, passengers would all go up to sundeck and they would wave in the direction of the sister ship as she went by.
Now that was Queen Elizabeth I?
That was the Elizabeth I, yes.
So the Queen Mary I and Elizabeth
Queen Elizabeth I, sister ships.
They sailed at the same time.
Yes, yes. It was commuter service, the way we are used to running trains. When the Mary would be in New York for 24 hours, the Queen Elizabeth would be at Southampton for 24 hours turning around, and then they would come back and cross in the middle. It was almost a 5-day passage, and each one was going the opposite direction.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, you could take the Mary over and come back on the Elizabeth.
And this wall down here?
On the aft bulkhead, yes. This, again, we saw this in the souvenir
and this
program.
Is the doors we were talking about?
Yes. This is Mary England by Philip Connard, the tapestry-like mural that Lavetta was talking about. Inset into the bottom are those bronze grille doors sculpted by Walter and Donald Gilbert, a father and son team. It was through these doors that the captain would make his entrance every night for dinner. Oh. His table was $1.99. It always sat in the center of the dance floor.
You know, when you look around, there's so many interesting carvings and so much artwork that it's hard to imagine all of the work that went into building this ship.
The artisans were just incredible. The pine wood carvings that you're referring to, there are 14 of them. They tell the history of shipbuilding, and they were carved by Bainbridge Copnell. All of the artists that did work aboard the ship went on to be very successful artists and artisans. Some of them were just starting their careers at the beginning of their careers when they were commissioned. Several of them were famous. Philip Connard here was already an established artist. I believe Dame Laura Knight, who did that circus painting that we saw in the art gallery, was also fairly well known at that time.
And I would assume passengers, when they dined here in this Grand Salon, were in full dress?
Formal dress, yes. First class dinner was always formal.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Okay, where are we going to go next?
I think we should go up onto prom deck.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Now, would this have been the first class deck?
Yes, Promenade Deck was for first-class passengers. This was an enclosed view of the North Atlantic, which lay about 65 feet below the deck. These are still the original teak wood decks. Spencer Tracy and his wife.
Oh.
She has a list of celebrities that have traveled on her, the likes of Greta Garbo, Marlene Dietrich, Clark Gable, David Niven, Bob Hope, Buster Keaton and his wife Eleanor. Coming up ahead, Winston Churchill. Churchill made 6 trips aboard the Queen Mary, 3 during the war and 3 after the war.
He looks different in that picture. Maybe he was younger.
Yes.
And this leads where?
We are going out to the bow of the ship. We're going to exit right here and go down a flight of stairs, and we will be on A deck.
Now, is this an anti-aircraft gun I see there?
Yes, straight ahead of us here on this deck is a anti-aircraft machine gun.
Is that left over from the war years?
It is an example of the type of artillery that she carried. No, it is not an original gun that has been here since the war. I wish I could say it was, but it's not. It is an example of the type of artillery that she did carry during the war, however.
And now we're on what, the forward deck?
We are going out to the bow, and I see Lavetta coming to greet us once again.
What's all of this equipment?
These are the
here?
winches.
Oh.
We used to be a mail ship, so they would have to bring in sacks of mail. We also had a garage on port side of E deck where they could store automobiles. People would travel to and from Europe or America with their cars.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Did you enjoy the Grand Salon?
Oh yes, I enjoyed the ship everywhere. You have a spectacular view of the city from this vantage point, don't you?
Oh, it's absolutely spectacular. At night especially. Of course, it's not too shabby during the day, but at night it's absolutely spectacular. By the way, how was the Grand Salon? Did you enjoy it?
Oh, yes.
Good.
Yes. I can even see the snow-capped mountains in the background.
Oh, absolutely.
today.
We have a perfect day for this, don't we? What wonderful weather we're having.
Guess that's why we live in Southern California.
I think so. Well, and the other thing too is at night the view in both directions is just spectacular. And you know, it's an interesting thing, Harvey, when the Queen Mary first came in and was converted for service here, one of the big changes was to put restaurants so we had a view of the city. When she was at sea, it was very rough and people were a little queasy and they didn't want to be looking out the windows, out the portholes, if you will, at the water. So that's something that's new here in Long Beach since it's been here these 40 years, as the views of the city skyline. Our very beautiful, spectacular, growing city skyline, yes?
So in port, they had the restaurants facing the outside, and during the voyages, they would be in the interior of the ship.
Well, actually, on the exterior of the ship were the walkways where they would walk, but not restaurants. The restaurants were all inside, like the Grand Salon and the Queen's Salon and others. They didn't have outside views from those. In fact, they tinted the mirrors pink so people would look more peachy than green. We don't have that kind of rough weather here in Long Beach Harbor.
Long Beach looks beautiful from here, doesn't it?
Oh, it's great. Of course, we have all the traffic here as well, which is fun for our guests to watch. The shuttles that run back and forth, and the occasional dolphin and whale that wanders in. It's lovely.
All right, where are we going to go next?
I believe we're going up to the captain's quarters up on the bow.
Oh, good. I haven't been
up
there.
on the bridge. That'll be great. You'll love that.
All right, let's go.
Let's go.
Before we go to the bridge, let me show you the captain's quarters, which are on display to the public here at the forward end of the ship. In front of us here is the staff captain's bedroom and sitting room. The staff captain was the second in command if anything should happen to the captain and he was not able to continue his duties. The staff captain would take over.
Those are quite nice quarters.
And next door here was the captain's day room, This is where he would entertain royalty, movie stars, sports figures, politicians.
So
all
he
who
would
travel.
bring passengers up to his
For
quarters?
cocktails, yes. This was the captain's bedroom.
That's quite nice. He did all right for himself.
He certainly did.
Now
Over the 31-year history, we had 33 captains.
Wow. Now this is the engine room?
This is the bridge. This is the forward section of the ship, the driver's seat for laymen. This is where the captain and his men would steer the course of the Queen Mary.
Now, are these funnel-looking things? Is that how they used to communicate?
They would communicate, yes, to the quarters below. All of the telephones that you see here, the louda-phones, they were capable of taking out any exterior noise that was behind you while you were talking so that they could communicate with the engine room at the very stern of the ship down below. The men up here who were steering had to stay in constant communication with the men down below who were powering the ship.
Now, in the movies I've seen, the equipment here, that's how they would slow and speed.
That's how they would send the directions, their telegraphs.
How
they
come
sent
they're 1,
communicate
2, 3, 4, 5?
all different areas. They had to communicate the same information to different areas of the ship.
So all 5 would have to be at the same speed at the same time, so you'd have 5 different operators communicating. They had quite a view up here, didn't they?
Absolutely. If you look straight ahead of us is the crow's nest. Why don't you come around here?
Oh, way up there?
All the way up there, yes.
And what was the crow's nest for?
Lookout.
People would climb up there and they would be a lookout
There
up
would
there?
be a crew member. Yes, absolutely.
And they would climb up those rope ladders?
No, there's a ladder inside. I believe it's 110 or 116 rungs all the way up from B deck forward up to the crow's nest.
Can you imagine the view from up there?
Yes. You know, there's a journal in our archives of a soldier during the war who was stationed up there, and the ship was rocking back and forth so badly that he said when he would look straight down from the crow's nest, he would not see the deck of the ship, he would see the water, which meant they were leaning over, listing over to one side.
Okay, now, Will, where are we going?
This is today the Queen's Salon. It was originally the first-class main lounge. This is where first-class passengers would come to spend their days, listening to classical music, reading. Sometimes there'd be a live pianist up on the stage. Late in the afternoon, there'd be a small orchestra.
Do I see 3 fireplaces in here?
Yes, 3 fireplaces, 2 on the sides, 1 on the forward bulkhead. They are electric for fire prevention measures. And the mantel pieces of the 3 fireplaces, along with the 8 lighting urns,
Those are beautiful.
they have all been carved from the same block of gold onyx to ensure the same color and the same grain.
This is quite ornate in here, isn't it?
Yes, the ship is known as the Ship of Beautiful Woods, and I think this room is probably the best example of that. The ceilings are Mazur birch, the walls are maple burr, the columns are cherry mahogany or macquarie, imported from West Africa.
Do you know how many this room would hold?
Today, this room seats 400 for dinner.
Wow.
That's a sit-down dinner. It can do a few more if it's just a buffet.
It would have been grand to travel in this ship, cruising the ocean in such luxury.
Absolutely. It would have been furnished with overstuffed couches and chairs, low coffee tables, large throw rugs that used to snap into the floor so that they wouldn't shift during rough weather. The second largest piece of artwork aboard the ship is here on the forward bulkhead. This is entitled Unicorns in Battle by Alfred J. Oakley and Gilbert Bays. It's a carved gesso panel Gesso is a process where artists mix plaster of Paris with glue. It's spread over a tough wooden base. The design or the picture is then carved into it. It's then gilded with silver or gold leaf. This happens to be gilded with both silver and gold leaf over a cream-colored background. The story behind the mural is that in mythology, if two unicorns battle, should their horns ever touch, it would create beautiful music.
I noticed the panel doors open. Was
Yes,
this,
there are 5 cutout squares in the center of the mural. Behind the mural was a projection booth.
So they showed movies in here?
Yes, late at night they would open those panels and they would project movies onto a screen which would be set up on the stage at the opposite end, and they use this as the first-class cinema.
All right, I think our last stop is going to be the observation
bar.
Let's go check it out. It's my favorite place.
Mine too.
Okay, this is my favorite spot on the ship.
The observation bar. Shall we pull up a seat?
Hey, let's do.
Oh, excellent.
I'll have a martini up, please.
Sorry, we're not open yet. That sounds really good.
All right, this is Art Deco again.
And this room is probably one of the most original rooms on the ship. A couple of changes that occurred in here. It was made larger. That outside band used to be part of the Promenade Deck. And we also opened a door to the outside because the local patrons wanted to enjoy the night air out on the deck.
Do you have entertainment here at night?
Yes, we do. We have entertainment here most nights, and for dancing and listening. And this room also has some of the most wonderful artwork on the ship. This beautiful mural has a great sense of humor. Why don't you tell them a little about it?
I think she had too much to drink.
I think so too.
This original mural by Alfred Thompson is entitled Royal Jubilee Week, and it depicts the celebration of King George V's 25th year as king.
No, it was a party.
Was this just for first-class passengers?
In the early years.
Originally it was, yes.
And then it was also used by third-class passengers later in its career, which is third is right below us in this area of the ship. And during the war, there were actually, it was just filled with bunks, and there were soldiers billeted in this bar. So it's had many uses through the years.
Now, on the maiden voyage, or when the Queen Mary sailed, and if you got the cheap seats, could you come up all the way to the upper deck, or were you limited to a certain deck?
Third class was located at the forward end of the ship, pretty much top to bottom. They did have an area that they could go outside.
But they couldn't come in here.
They couldn't come in here. Second class was at the stern of the ship, the back end, and first class was in the middle of the ship because they got the smoothest ride. That's what determined the classes.
Did diners other than first class have to dress for dinner also?
I think generally in society at that time, people automatically took it for granted that they would dress.
They would wear
for
the
dinner.
best they had with them to the dinner on the ship, whether it was third class or second class or first.
The men were always in jackets, sports jackets or suit jackets and ties. The ladies always had hat and gloves.
And how long did it take to make the crossing?
About 4.5 days.
That would be neat.
Yes, and of course you couldn't fly. There weren't planes then. I think that the beauty about the ship is throughout her history, from the maiden voyage to now, here it's these 70 years. She's done so many things in her career, and here in Long Beach still continues to serve the community and be an active place for social gatherings, whether it's having dinner or staying aboard or having a wedding or a catered event or a convention or a carnival or whatever happens here.
And I hope this treasure stays here forever.
And it will, and I think that's the message we wanted to tell Long Beach, is that she's your treasure. Come enjoy her. It's all aboard the Queen Mary. It's all right here.
Lavetta, Will, thank you for joining me today.
Oh, it's great having you here.
This is a great, great ship. And as I said, this is probably the treasure of Long Beach.
Well, and don't make it so long next time. Come back sooner.
Because I'm sure there's a lot you can show me.
Absolutely.
I'd love to.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for watching. That's our show for this time. Come back next month and take another walk through history and uncover more Long Beach treasures.